The lamp don't hardly light nothing down there, just enough to see what's close. And what was close that night in the fall of 1935 was the cage. 3 shifts running, them canaries hadn't sung a note, hadn't dropped neither, just sat on that little perch, still as carved wood, staring past the wire into the black past where the lamplight quit, and Ezra Combs, 34-year-old coal dust, so deep in the creases of his hands he'd carry it to his grave, was the only man in that headin' who stopped his pick mid-swing to look at him. Everybody else kept working, kept swinging, like the quiet wasn't nothing at all. I ain't gonna tell you what a bird knows that a man don't rightly know myself. But Ezra told it to another man years on, settin' by a fire, not knowing a boy was close enough to hear. And what he said was, the sound of them picks going behind him that night was the loneliest sound he ever heard. Not for being loud, for him being the only one who'd noticed it had gone quiet everywhere else. Hold on now. You can't rightly understand what he saw in that cage less you know how Seam 9 got that way first. So let me back up and take you there proper. It's just me, Papaw Elias. Glad it's you settin' close for this one, 'cause this one I don't tell to just anybody. If you'll stay with me, come back Saturdays and Sundays, that's when I light the lamp and tell these, I'd be obliged. And if you'll leave that thumb up on your way out, it brings a few more that can stomach hearing it. Don't take but a second. Now, where was I? Seam 9, 1935, deep end of Seam 9, further back than most men cared to work, where the roof set low and you learned to bend without thinking on it no more. Ezra was on his 3rd shift running in that headin', pick swinging, same as the other 6 men down there with him. Coal dust hanging thick enough you could taste it, for you could smell it. Carbide lamp hissing soft on his belt, throwing just enough light to see the man next to him and not a foot past that. And the cage hanging off a roof bolt, same place it always hung. Them 2 canaries had quit singing the 1st shift, quit again the 2nd. Foreman, man name of Coy Sizemore, called it bad air clearing through and told the men to keep on. So they kept on. 3rd shift, Ezra come up out of a stoop to ease his back, and that's when he has seen it proper for the first time. Them birds weren't dead, weren't sick. They was set upright on the perch, feathers smooth, eyes open, staring past the wire of that cage into the dark where the lamplight give out. Not at Ezra, not at the men. Past all of it. He told me he stood there a good while just watching them not blink, and the longer he watched, the more he got the feeling. A grown man of 34, mind you, not some green boy. He weren't looking at birds no more. He was looking at something else. And he didn't want to know what. Ezra opened his mouth to say something to the man next to him, and that's when the pick strikes behind him. 6 men still swinging, still working, went quiet in his ears, not stopped, just gone from his hearing like his own head had shut a door. That's the part he could never rightly explain to me. And I ain't going to pretend I can explain it to you. Now hold on, let me back up, 'cause that 3rd shift wasn't the start of it. That 3rd shift was near the end of something that had been building a good while. This here's Ezra's story, my grandpop's story. And I'll tell you plain, Ezra didn't lie. A man that's been buried alive don't waste breath on lies. And he was once, years before Seam 9, but that's a different causo for a different night. So let me take you back to that spring. For any of this started when Seam 9 was just another seam and Ezra was just another young man working it. Seam 9 sat back in the Harlan County hills, part of a coal camp, same as 100 others, rows of company houses, a store that took scrip stead of real money, a tipple that groaned all hours like it was tired of holding itself up. Ezra was 34-year-old that spring, boarding near his older brother and working the same seam their daddy'd worked 'fore his lungs give out. Simple life. Up 'fore light, dinner bucket, packed with cornbread and fatback, home 'fore dark smelling of coal smoke and creek water, church house on Sunday whether a man wanted it or not. The men who'd worked Seam 9 a spell had a way of talking about it that Ezra didn't understand yet. Not scared talk, just careful talk. Like you'd talk about a dog you didn't fully trust, even though it had never bit nobody. One of the older men, feller name of Verney Caudle, told Ezra his first week down there, Seam 9 don't run like the others, quieter, and when a mind gets quiet, boy, you best get quiet with it. Ezra didn't think much on that. Young men don't, generally. He had his pick, his lamp, his dinner bucket, and 30 cents a ton to think about. That was the home place, near enough. Peaceful as any of it ever got. Right up till the first sign come. First time it happened wasn't but a Tuesday. Ordinary as any other. Them two Canaries went quiet about an hour into first shift. Just stopped singing mid-song near enough and set still on the perch. Foreman Coy Sizemore come by, tapped the cage, said something about bad air moving through and clearing out, and told the men there weren't no cause to stop working over a couple birds acting contrary. Could have been right. Bad air does move through a seam like that, comes and goes, and a bird'll go quiet when it don't like what it's breathing. That part made sense to Ezra. Still makes sense to me telling it, but bad air don't usually pass through and leave two birds setting upright, wide awake, staring at the same corner of dark for the rest of a 10-hour shift. Ezra didn't know to be afeared yet. Wasn't scared a bit, truth be told, just curious, in a way that itched at him some. He asked Verney about it, walking up out of the mine that evening. Verney just spit and said, "Told you, get quiet with it," and wouldn't say no more. That was the first sign. And the question Ezra carried out of there, the one he never did put down, was simple as this: what's a bird looking at in the dark that a lamp won't show a man? Let me stop a second. Something I always wonder when I'm telling these. Where you settin' right now? What town? What state? This one happened up in Harlan County, and I get to wondering sometimes if anybody's listening from close to there. Maybe even got kin that worked a seam like Seam 9. Write it down yonder, if you don't mind. I read every one of 'em. Anyhow, back to it. It kept on. Second sign come near 2 weeks later. Same pattern, same two birds, only this time it held longer. A full shift and into the next, 'fore they come back to singing regular. Verney wouldn't talk on it no more. But Ezra noticed something else, now that he was watching close. The men working that deep heading had took to talking less. Not scared talk still, just less talk. Like conversation itself was something that used up a resource down there, and men were rationing it without saying why. Foreman Sizemore kept calling it bad air, kept sending them back in. By the third time, that third shift I told you about at the start, even the fellers who'd laughed it off the first go-round had quit laughing. Nobody said a word about it up top. A man's got a family to feed, and 30 cents a ton don't come from standing around talking about birds. Ezra couldn't tell his own brother what he was feeling by then. Who'd believe a canary was watching something back? But some nights he'd sit by the fire and say it out loud anyway, half to himself, half to whoever was in the room, an older man named of Silas Boggs mostly, who had a way of listening that didn't judge a young man for what he said. I know, 'cause I was the boy in that room, settin' quiet in the corner where a child weren't supposed to still be awake, hearin' my own grandpop talk about them birds like they'd looked right through him. Now, I'll give it to you the way Ezra give it to me, the way I heard him say it, settin' by that fire, not knowin' a boy was still awake in the corner. He said, I want you to understand something, Silas. I weren't afeard of them birds dyin'. Birds die. I've buried plenty. What I couldn't stomach was them not dyin'. Just settin' there, takin' it in however long it wanted to take it in. Like whatever was back in that dark had all the time in the world and knew it. He said the worst part wasn't what he seen. It was what he quit hearin'. A man works a mine his whole life, Silas. He don't know how loud it is. Pick strikes, timber creaking, water dripping somewhere you can't find it. It's never quiet down there. Never. And when it goes quiet, truly quiet all at once, like somebody snuffed every sound in that heading same time, a man's own heartbeat gets so loud in his ears he can't hardly stand it. That's what he said. I never forgot it, not one word. And that brings us back to that third shift, the one I started with. Ezra come up out of his stoop, easing his back. The cage hanging where it always hung, them two canaries, feathers smooth, eyes open, staring past the wire, into the dark where the lamplight quit. Not at Ezra, not at the men, past all of it. Only now you know what he told Silas. Now you know what he was carrying in by that third shift. 2 weeks of watching men talk less and less, a foreman that wouldn't hear different, a warning from Verney he never did explain. He stood there, didn't run, couldn't rightly say why not. Just his legs didn't take the order. And then his hearing went, same as before, only complete this time. Pick strikes gone, breathing gone. He tried to step back, heard nothing, not his own boot on rock, nothing, just him, the lamp, 2 birds looking at something he couldn't see, and his heart pounding so loud in his own ears he figured the other men had to hear it too. Wasn't till Foreman Sizemore hollered something about the next car needin' loaded that the sound come back all at once, like a door thrown open, and Ezra found he'd been standing there a good deal longer than he thought. Now, here's what I can tell you, and here's where I got to stop telling you anything for certain. Couple weeks after that third shift, word come down that the far end of that heading was being abandoned. Not sealed, mind you, just quietly left be. Company said the coal there weren't worth the trouble no more. Didn't say trouble of what kind. Some of the older men, Verney included, allowed as how the seam itself had took a notion, like a piece of ground could get tired of being worked, or particular about who worked it. Foreman Sizemore, when Ezra finally asked him straight, just said, gas pockets do that sometimes. Build up somewhere, a man can't smell it till it's thinned back out, and by the time he does smell it, his head's already been affected some. That's a real thing. Happens in coal country. I ain't saying it didn't happen here, but I'll tell you this. Ezra worked coal another 4 years after that in 3 other seams, and never once lost his hearing like that again. Not one time. Knowing that much never did bring him peace on the matter, only gave him something to carry instead of something to solve. That far end of seam 9 never did get work steady again. Company kept the rest of it running for years, but that particular heading, they'd send a man back there when they had no other choice. And no man ever asked twice. Verney Caudill retired out of that mine in 1941 and never spoke of it after, far as I know. Foreman Sizemore stayed on till the mine itself closed and always held to his gas story right up till he passed. Ezra never went back to seam 9 at all, not after he left it in 39. But he kept 2 Canaries of his own later, up at the home place. Kept 'em his whole life, long after any need to. My mama used to fuss at him over the seed money. He never told me why, I never asked. And that was the end of it, whatever it was. That one sets heavy. I know it. So you tell me, down in them comments, you reckon it was gas, thinned out just enough to fool a man's senses, same as Sizemore always claimed? Or you reckon that seam knew something, and them birds were only the first ones smart enough to see it? I told you where Ezra landed, keeping birds of his own the rest of his days. Where do you land? Come back this weekend? I got one about a preacher man and a river baptism that didn't end the way the whole congregation remembers it. Some of 'em still won't talk on it. I'll tell you something before I let you go. There's a scripture my own daddy used to read on nights like this. Something about how the darkness and the light are both alike to the Lord. I used to take comfort in that. Some nights I still do. Other nights I wonder if it means the dark just sees us the same either way, whether we're looking back at it or not. My grandpop Ezra's gone on now, near 20 year, but I still think of him standing in that heading, watching 2 birds that wouldn't sing, and some evenings out here on my own porch when it gets quiet all at once, quieter than it ought to. This time of night, I find myself glancing over at my own chickens, just to see if they're looking at something I ain't. They never are. Not yet, anyhow. That's all I got for this one, young'un. Set with me again this weekend.